It's time for the big conversations, telling stories of movers and shakers, of industry giants and daring professionals. It's time for the conversations that change your perspective on life. The kind of conversations that shape entrepreneurs and move careers forward. If you don't know where these conversations are found, we are sending you a GPS. But if you're listening to this voice right now, you are here. Welcome to the Growth Podcast. This is the GPS.
Mr. Kalero, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Sue. Great to be here.
Good. How's Absa Bank doing?
We're doing great, busy, and making good progress.
Okay. For those of watching that would not know who Brian Kalero is, tell us a bit about yourself, your educational background, professional background.
Great. No, thank you so much. I am Brian Kalero. In terms of education background, quite interesting. I started my primary school on the Copper Belt in Kitwe, to be precise, and I was at a primary school called Miseshi Primary School. And then thereafter, I did my junior secondary school at Indeka Secondary School, and I did my high education at Ucrest in Livingston. And interesting, I completed my grade 12 in 1998. And after that, a year later, I joined the bank straight from high school. And progressively, I started studying. I did my NATEC, which is more or less the equivalent of the diploma in accounting. And then thereafter, I did my ACCA, graduated some time back. So I'm a fellow of ACCA and Zika as well. And then I did my MBA with Edinburgh Business School in the UK. And over the years, I've done different courses, of course, that pertain to my banking career. Okay. In a nutshell, that's my...
Have you always been in banking?
Yes, I've actually only worked for one organization. So when I joined Barclays then in November 1999, and then so it's been slightly almost close to 25 years, and then Barclays, then we transitioned into Absa, and here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Working for one organization, we will go into that conversation. But tell me about your first time working in an organization. What was it like for you, being young?
I think it was quite interesting. I was 20 years old then, straight from high school, and my first job was a bank teller in Livingston branch, to be precise. And it was one of those navigating, learning the environment in a new place, and coming from, high school. I had aspirations of going to do my degree in accountancy at Copperbelt University, which didn't materialize, though I was accepted. Because of some circumstances, my dad had just left work. So transitioning, into working instantly, which I didn't plan for, was quite an adjustment for me. But I easily adapted, and I was able to cope with the demands of the job that I was doing at the time.
Okay. How long did it take between your first entry job as a tailor to your promotion? Your first promotion?
My first promotion, it took 2.5 years. I worked as a tailor for at least a couple of years. And then thereafter, I got the promotion. So, yeah, it took just about that.
Okay. What do you think was the difference between someone like you who it took 2.5 years, and I know that the others who it took longer?
I think when I joined the bank, one of the things that I had aspirations was really, I'm very driven by growth. And I'm very determined and focused. So I don't like doing a job for too long. And I always strive to look for ways of striving to grow. So because of that focus, I kept my mind very open to learning new things and desiring really for new knowledge. And I remember my first appraisal, my line manager asked me, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I think I was very clear that, I want to grow my career in corporate banking. And and it was that clear focus really of wanting to be in a particular place at a particular time.
Okay, so you've mentioned that you like growth. For those whose careers are static, what usually is a problem?
It can be a function of a lot of things. I always remember one of my bosses told me that you own your own growth. We will support you, but at the end of the day, you need to really drive your own growth, meaning that you need to look out for opportunities. You need to be hardworking. There is no substitute to really hardworking and being disciplined, because sometimes people want the growth, but they don't want to pay the costs of what comes with the growth. And for me, that looked like studying and working at the same time, because I didn't have the benefit of being in university. So I needed to balance those two. So for those that, have been in roles for a long time, it's also an opportunity to introspect what hasn't worked and why have you stagnated for a long time. And sometimes people, blame the system, but without realizing that probably the problem could be yourself. And the need to just introspect and have that self-awareness and be willing to learn and grow.
You've mentioned that people want to grow, but they don't want to face the cost of the growth.
Correct.
For you, what was the cost of the growth?
The cost of the growth was, number one, I had to sacrifice a lot, in the sense that I needed to make sure that after work, I have to study. I had exams, long nights, and also it really required a high level of focus and discipline, because as a young man, you're getting paid. I needed to be very clear around the power of association. So I had to really make sure that I associate with people that will inspire me to grow and to learn. So it was about choices that I had to make, but also that I had to take the pain of making sure that I put in the hard work and sacrifice a lot, and make sure that my studies don't suffer and my work doesn't suffer.
In a work setup, how do you identify that, okay, those people, I think, association with those who align me towards my growth, and those ones,
It's always interesting, because in a workplace, you always have different types of people, right? And most of the time, for me, the way I've chosen my associations is really, it's to understand what motivates people, what preoccupies them, what do they talk about, what do they aspire. And they always say, I remember one of my mentors say to me, association brings assimilation. So the more you interact with people, you can actually assess whether people are building you or they are destroying you. And sometimes it's the ability to have the courage to let go of things that are not healthy, for your growth, and choose to be different and be distinct. So you can tell as you engage and interact on a regular basis that sometimes some relationships and associations can be toxic for you.
Okay, we'll get to the toxicity. I forgot one thing. We have these cards, Mr. Kalero. Should have done this in the beginning.
Sure.
I need you to pick 4 of them. There's a question on each. Just pick any 4 at random.
Okay.
Any 4. Don't look at any 4. So that's 1.
That's 1, yeah.
Ask the question.
Okay. Should I read?
Yeah, I read it.
What's the last thing you changed your mind about, and why?
Yeah.
Wow. I think one of the things, if I recall, there was a time I was transitioning from working for Absa Bank Zambia to Absa Bank Tanzania, where I took on the role of the corporate banking director. So that was 2018. And when I had made that decision, I was in the final stages, really, of progressing and going ahead. And then there was an opportunity that came up, to take on a role within Zambia. And, people around me were seemingly convincing me to really not to take up the role in Tanzania. And when I assessed everything, I had to tell myself, I can't change, number one, my mind at this stage. And I think that the growth and the opportunities that working in a different country brings is something that I need for my exposure. So I had to really, even if everything was looking very positive with the other role, I had to let go and make sure that I stick to what I needed to pursue at that time.
Do you regret it?
No, it's one of the best decisions. With hindsight, I look back. It's been it's been one of the best decisions.
Interesting. Next card. You've done one. 3 more to go.
Interesting. When was the last time you took a leap of faith and found out you could fly? Wow. A leap of faith. Interesting. I think I've done some very interesting things, in my career. There was one time, I was offered a job in another organization that was very lucrative, and everything was pointing to the direction that you should take that role. It was actually a great hire, and everything was pointing. It made sense, more than doubling your pay and all those things. But, as a Christian, I'm very focused around being in the right place at the right time, where God wants me to be. So I decided to turn down that opportunity. And when I turned it down, that organization even improved the offer. And I let go of that opportunity. I didn't take it. And what happened was, a few months down the line, that job in that organization was actually scrapped off the structure. And I looked back and said I took a step of faith by listening to what God wanted me to be, to where I needed to be at that particular time. And it wasn't about money. It was about being in the right place at the right time. And before long, the promotion came in the organization that I've been with for nearly 25 years.
Okay. Look, for most people, I know look, it's not about money. It's easy to say it's not about money when the offer is not there. You know that, right?
Correct,
Like,
correct.
it's easy for me to say, guys, it's not about money, jobs. It's not. But when it's there and you see it written down and you double your pay and you think,
that's right.
What do you consider when weighing an offer, really, away from just the pay? For most people, it's really about, because we work hard for the money,
Absolutely. I think for me, and I mean, money is very important. We all work for money, right? For jobs, for me, the job content and the profile of it is also very important, and the experience that particular job brings thereof for me. And because I was very clear in the direction I needed to grow my career in corporate banking and or corporate credit. So because of that, it's kind of defined, and it brought a lot of focus in terms of what particular roles I would pursue. But other than looking at the job content and the profile thereof, for me, it's always about also huge consideration around the organization itself, and the profile that organization will bring to you becomes very important. So you've got to look at it very holistic. Otherwise, if you just focus on money, you end up missing it.
You mentioned clarity in terms of what you want to be,
Correct.
what you want, to achieve in the organization. Most people lack that aspect. How do you develop clarity around, this is where I am in 2 years, in 3 years, in 10 years, this is where I see myself. And everything that comes in my way, which does not speak to where I'm going, it's a no.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's quite interesting because from my personal experience, I think I've always consulted God through prayer in terms of what direction I should take and the clarity that I need. And it gives me, the sense of peace has been one of the major, sort of confirmations around clarity. But also, I am very passionate about planning ahead. So therefore, most of the time, when I look at myself, what I'm doing, I always say, in the next 2 to 3 years, where do I want to get to? And what do I need to get me there? So that focus for me comes with a lot of careful planning, a lot of introspection around where you're at, and what motivates me also to even aspire for more growth opportunities is really, more importantly, the extent to which I can impact positively others and help them grow as a person and as a leader.
Okay. Cut number 3.
Looks a short one. How do you best receive criticisms? Well, it's I think I'm very open-minded. In my career and in life in general, I have learned to embrace criticism and not take criticism personal, but use criticism as a point of reflection in terms of what are the things that I can do better and how can I be a better version of myself. And embracing criticism helps you to also improve, and also having a teachable spirit, because all of us sometimes we may not get to understand that we've got blind spots and the ability to just take a step back. And it's been just being open-minded, and it's a continuous process for all of us.
You are a very high-ranking official in the bank. Mm-hmm. To imagine that you receive criticism is seemingly far-fetched, because who do you receive criticism from? Do you ever receive criticism from your subordinates, people who are lower ranking than you?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. It's interesting. There are many times, I have engagements with my team, and a number of times it has happened to me when we are doing these performance appraisals, and I ask them, what are the areas you think I need to work on? I need to improve. And sometimes a lot of them get caught off guard and say, oh, I didn't think about that. But I use it as an opportunity for them to give me feedback. And it doesn't wait for moments like that. On our regular interactions, I always say, what do you think I can do better? I was actually asking somebody yesterday. And it's that ability to just be you and be authentic to people and connect and realize that you're a work in progress as a person and as a leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for your support that you give to the podcast. We don't take it for granted. If you feel that the content on the podcast is worth it, it's valuable, that you learned something, we're asking you to support us even further with your financial contribution. That way, you help us to meet our costs, and we keep the lights on, and we make sure that the podcast is always available to you. You can do so by sending a contribution to any of the numbers that are showing right below. We thank you for supporting the Growth Podcast. Cut number 4.
Okay. What widely accepted beliefs needs to be dead and buried? Wow. Interesting. I think some of the beliefs, it's really around, if I look at careers and in life in general, you find that a lot of times it's the beliefs where people, have a huge sense of entitlement. The people don't want to work hard to earn, the things that they need, and therefore they go on about life wanting the benefits of different things in life without realizing that there's a process connected to it. There is a cost to every measure of success. So it's those belief system which kind of, creates this separation between the success you aspire and the things that you need vis-a-vis the process and the pain the character building to handle the success. Those are some of the things that I can think of, and also the things that need to be dead and buried is it's not about where you're coming from that informs where you're going. It's the decisions that you make today that will influence your future, and the need to. I'm a very hopeful person, and I always see life and hope in everyone, and therefore there are many times I encourage people to say, it's your greatness is in your uniqueness. So don't be another person, be yourself, and be the best version of yourself. Then you greatly contribute to society and life.
Okay. So you join the bank as a teller. You've got no subordinates. Tell me about your first time managing someone. When you got promoted, now you've got maybe one or two people under you. How was it for you, the adjustment?
So I'll speak of two instances. I think the first time I had a subordinate, it was just one person, and that's probably about 15 years ago. And this person was a close friend of mine. So it was very interesting, navigating work, the professional side, and being very close friends. But one of the things that we had a very good understanding, and he was accountable to me, and we kept the friendship and separate from the work environment. But at the same time, we had a great cohesion in terms of how we were relating. But one of the major points was when I was leading a bigger team, and that was about 10 years ago. It was such a huge adjustment for me in the sense that I'm a very relational person. And as part of my leadership journey, one of the things that I struggled with was the ability to be firm and to hold people accountable for performance. So it's almost how you integrate your head and your heart and ensure that in your leadership, both are very important. Your ability to connect and build relationships with the team, but at the same time, hold them accountable for performance. So I had to progressively grow into that. It was a huge adjustment, but I had a boss that, was very forthright with me, helped me to navigate that transition. And and I look back, and it's been quite an interesting journey.
Okay. As a rookie manager, what kind of mistakes did you make that you would want others to avoid? New in management.
I think as a young banker, it's how your assertiveness is communicated to your seniors and your aspirations. So in my first 3-4 years of my banking career, I think I was very clear on which areas I wanted to grow. So when opportunities that came up where some of my seniors wanted me to apply, I turned them down. And the how I did it could have been done better. I, with hindsight, I look back and realize that even when you are focused as a young person, you are determined, and you want to grow, be mindful of your how and how you communicate and how you really engage your stakeholders in terms of your aspirations. You have to have the humility and their buy-in to support you through the process. So I learned that I think maybe I could have done it a little bit not in a very comfortable way, which wasn't ideal. And I looked back and I apologized and learned from it. Yeah, so that's one of the mistakes. I probably may have gone ahead of myself, in the process.
And sometimes you find that some people have got ambition, like I want to be this, and that.
That's right.
And on their way to wanting to achieve that ambition, you find that they begin to damage relationships. You've touched a bit on it, but I'd like you to expand in terms of how do I still satisfy my need for ambition, but still also sort of like manage my stakeholders within the organization so that others don't make it look like I'm just running over them for me to get to where I want to be.
It's kind of I think it's a very important aspect, of when you talk about stakeholder management, and it doesn't stop, it just grows with more responsibilities. I think it's been very engaging with stakeholders and knowing how to approach each one of them, and realizing that each one of them is distinct, and being engaging brings out the ability for you to know what their expectations are, how they want to be communicated, how they want to sort of work with you. So I've had multiple bosses over time, and each one of them, they've got different leadership styles. So it's the ability to learn, the diversity, and also realize that with the different stakeholders, it's the ability to get results out of a particular job that you have. But at the same time, you realize that even when you have the ambition, it's actually, the ambition has to be supported by your stakeholders, and therefore harnessing relationships, healthy relationships with those stakeholders becomes very important. It's a lot of hard work, but you've got to be intentional about it.
You've been in the bank, ABSA, from Barclays, ABSA now, for over, like you said, close to 25 years, right? 25 years itself. That's right. Now we're living in a society where they say you shouldn't, last too long in the same place. You either become frustrated, or there's no growth, or there's this issue that if you stay too long in the same place, you become too comfortable. There's no much, energy that you give it. Your zeal sort of like wanes. It's like, because I've been here, we're doing the same thing over and over. You've been there 25 years. How do you still, one, remain relevant, two, maintain the same level of energy, if not higher? Because you look like even today, you're still enjoying your job that you've had, all these years. Not that it's the same job, but the same organization, same people, everyone comes and goes, but you're still there. Great. How do I still achieve that?
I think it's having the mindset of continuous learning. And if I look back, I've done different roles, in different countries. And one of the things that I have seen is that I have to make every opportunity count for a particular role that I have. I've done this role that I'm currently doing for the last 4 years. And it's always about, how do I begin to expand my knowledge and my experience for the next job? So sometimes people get stuck from the fact that, I've done this job and it's mundane, but it's about what's the new horizon that, comes with the ability for you to be clear around the next role, and how do you start growing into that and having a mindset of preparedness, so that when the opportunity comes, you transition into it. So that's the way I have taken it. And I look back and realize also that, you see, at every given time, you get to a point where you feel you have outgrown the role, and it's about how do you continuously now start taking on additional responsibilities. And sometimes people wait to be given things on paper to learn new areas of different parts of the organization, but it just extends your ability to grow more. So I enjoy the job that I do greatly, and it's very dynamic. You deal with different clients across different sectors. The environment is evolving, so it's I feel revitalized every time, and also one of the things I enjoy is just seeing people grow. It's very fulfilling for me.
Okay. There are a lot of young people who work in these organizations, and I see myself here in the long haul. But the challenge then is that I am not growing. There are no opportunities. Sometimes you find that maybe I am not visible enough for them to see me and identify me for opportunities, or sometimes the structure of the organization just doesn't allow for me to grow. If these things were present, I would give everything. I am giving everything, but nothing is changing, and now they begin to look outward. What's the approach that young people should have where I'm doing everything, but the organization also is not sort of like responding to me?
Yeah, it's. I think organizations are very diverse. Some are very in the state that you've given as an example. I think I would say that in instances like that, your individual distinction of excellence and delivery will earn you growth within that organization or elsewhere. So never be limited by the discomfort of the present organization or environment. But it's how do you start progressively becoming the change you want to see. And sometimes, yes, it may be easier said than done, but it's the ability to maintain a positive mindset at all times, and also seeking new ways of, if I feel I've done my time, how do I transition? How do I look for opportunities out there? Because, opportunities will always be there. It is just about you always being in a place of readiness, always being in a place of continuously working on yourself to improve yourself and to gain new skills, new knowledge that will better position you. So that's what would be my encouragement to such a person.
What advice would you give to a young person who just walked into their first managerial role?
Number one, it's the ability to learn that that transition into the managerial role requires you to work with others and manage teams, and leadership requires that you balance and be more sensitive around the leading with the team by being more intentional around nurturing relationships. Knowing your stakeholders is a key part, and I think as being very clear, in terms of your delivery, how you communicate what you are responsible for in your managerial role becomes very important, and also being intentional about growing your profile in terms of with the wider stakeholders in the organization becomes very important. And what I also see is that it's also to be intentional around investing in yourself in leadership development. For you to lead effectively, you've got to invest in yourself, and there will be many trainings at your disposal in leadership that are very important. So it's kind of an array of a lot of things around being intentional about personal growth, which should inform how you also grow others, in summary.
Okay. Yeah. There are different ways people go about promotion. Yeah. Others you can tell that one is pushing for a promotion. You can visibly tell that one is pushing for a promotion. Right. Others just focus on their work and then they're identified and promoted. Yeah. Which of the two approaches would you recommend?
It depends. It depends. It's not a bad thing to aspire, be driven, and push for promotion. You've got to be driven. You've got to be competitive. You've got to desire it. Otherwise, if you wait for things to happen, they may not happen. For me, I'm very driven and very focused and result-oriented. So I have always made it very clear around, this is what I aspire, this is what I want to do. And I think sometimes it's a lack of confidence, and people just, hold back and assume your stakeholders know. And I remember my boss told me that, Brian, I know how great you are, but others in the bank don't know. So begin to raise your profile and begin to grow and connect more and more with people. It's your work, but lift your eyes and communicate your value to stakeholders becomes very important.
How do you communicate your value to stakeholders?
sometimes it would be a reflection of the key successes you've achieved, the positive impact you've created to the organization, and never assume that everyone knows. And for roles like what I do, we deal with multiple clients across the sectors. You do significant, transactions that create huge economic benefit for the country, and therefore how you elevate that to stakeholders become important. If you're a young person, you have ideas that are innovative, that will help your organization to be more efficient, effective. Bring those to the table, and you never know who will say your name in some boardroom. So it's the ability to have that creativity and just to bring your value to the table in your own unique way, because I always believe that each one of us is gifted very differently, and it's the ability to communicate that value and make sure that you make a difference.
Okay, how do you draw the line between communicating your value and being so much in people's faces that you become an abanabo?
It's it's kind of a very delicate balance. It requires a lot of wisdom, in the sense that it's the ability to learn when to push and to pull back, and also it requires a lot of maturity. Sometimes I've been in instances where I didn't realize that maybe I was pushing too hard to get results, and I've had to balance the ability to pull back a little bit, just to make sure that the balance has to be right. So don't be overly into the face of people to a point of irritation, but have the wisdom to balance and nurture the two, and get the best outcome.
Okay, you mentioned earlier about relationships. How would you say that leveraging relationships has worked for your career? How has it supported your career?
Immensely. It has supported my career immensely, because I work for a bank that is a Pan-African bank, and you have stakeholders. You build relationships, in country and across our different countries that we operate in, and our head office being in South Africa. I'm a very relational person, and it comes very naturally for me. So I'm very intentional around building relationships. And if I look at the connection with my career, I think the jobs that I've had, there's been so much God's favor that, they've been very much on identification basis. And it's one of those that, you have the favor of God, and at the same time, you always strive for excellence in your job. So yeah, it's worked immensely for me. There's so many stakeholders that have supported my growth greatly, and my CEO is one of them.
Okay, for many people, it's one of those things where I know Mr. Kalero is key to my growth. How do I even go about approaching him? So
it's interesting. I met somebody recently, and they said, I've always been looking for something. I needed help from you, in terms of career development and career growth, but I didn't know how to speak to you. And then I was saying, is it that, do I look scary, or what was the limitation? Why you haven't done it for a long time? And then they said, I think the problem is with me. So I'm a firm believer in very approachable leadership style, and very engaging. So what you see is what you get. So for me, I'm very open like that. And I mentor many people, in the organization and outside the organization. It's just the courage to approach, and also realize that it doesn't matter who is the leaders. They are people, and you can connect with them. So don't be shy.
What mistakes do you see a lot of young professionals making right now?
It's wanting quick success. You just graduate, your first job, and you already want to ascend to very senior roles. There's nothing wrong with ambition, but you have to allow the process. The process builds character to handle what is ahead of you. And sometimes the young people don't want to be teachable and having the humility to learn. So it's that balance that is very important for the young people to have a teachable spirit, to be focused, to be disciplined, and to know that the people that you admire, they're a product of so many years to get to where they are at. And therefore, your path will be unique. Your path may not be 20 years, may not be 5 years or 10 years, but work and stick to your lane. Don't compare with others. Discover that your unique self and pursue what God has in store for you.
Okay. Then also there are also issues around discipline. Yeah. I know what I should be doing. I know my career, for me to thrive, requires this of me, but for some reason I just don't do it.
You know, they say discipline is the new intelligence. And I think for me, nothing gets done without discipline. And that's where there's a differentiation between those people that deliver average results and those that deliver exceptional results. You know, because it's uncomfortable, people don't want to, live a disciplined life. And that requires that you have to let go of certain things. You have to embrace the pain that comes with growth, because you have two choices. Don't be disciplined and delay your growth, or be disciplined and accelerate your growth. So life is about choices. I've always strived to choose the way of discipline because it has greatly helped me in my life and in my career. And also the peer pressure. You know, sometimes the indiscipline comes because you want to fit in. You want to do what your friends are doing. But if you are in school, if it's time to study and work, stick to that, and make sure that you build your foundation on very solid ground that will help you in future.
So today they say that at entry level, like for example, when you were a teller, you know, in the beginning of one's career, it's really the technical skills that matter, you know, and then as you rise at the level you are now, it's more the soft skills. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's, in your initial stages of your career, there has to be a lot of investment in your technical skills. But as you progressively grow in your career around more leadership responsibilities, the softer skills, as they may call them, are very important, because you always have to get results from leading teams and connecting with people, connecting with stakeholders. But that's not to say that even at a higher level, the technical skills are not important. But it's just that the delivery of most of those technical skills will be done through your teams. But it shouldn't divorce from you bringing the expertise, you know, even at a higher level, around your depth of understanding of technical skills that actually can help others to grow. So it's that transition that also is very important. And sometimes you find that people stick to the technical things, even when they are leading teams, and they don't want to embrace, you know, the softer skills, the ability to connect and inspire the teams and motivate them. So it requires a lot of selflessness, because leadership is about others. Yeah.
For someone who wants to rise to the level where you are in the organization, what kind of leadership skills do you think they should begin to work on?
I think relationship skills are very key. they say relationship management is life management. So you always interact and connect with people. And therefore, your ability to strengthen your relationship skills is key in your leadership journey, and also the ability to just have a teachable spirit, because sometimes when you are a leader and you think you have it all, you can easily be puffed up, and you may not see certain blind spots. So it's how you become continuously teachable and authentic, because the authenticity, they always say, people are attracted to the authentic you. So as you lead teams, that ability to have authenticity is very key. When people see that your word is your bond, and you have credibility and integrity, it becomes very key.
Okay, I know you mentioned that you've got a good boss now, because you alluded to it. But has there ever been a time in your career where you had a boss who was difficult to work with?
Yes.
How did you navigate that?
It was an interesting time. So the particular boss that I had at the time was the relationship was quite uncomfortable, in the sense that I think they liked micromanaging, and they never gave me space to do my job. And in the end, it started becoming a bit frustrating. But in that moment, I didn't lose my focus and my ability to do my job with excellence. And they always say, excellence will always defend you in your absence. So people will always see individuals that deliver with excellence, regardless of the uncomfortable period that, particularly for me, that I was going through. And that season didn't last more than a year. But I learned not to take things personal, but to also recognize the person as my boss and just stick to delivering my job.
Okay. Sometimes for many people, performance reviews are a bit of a challenge in terms of how you go about them. How do you think a person whose performance is being reviewed can prepare for a performance review so that it's easier for them and also for the line manager?
I think it's been very clear around, what the deliverables and the objectives were that was set in your performance development plan, and it's been concise around and being very objective around what has worked, what you've done well, and being very clear around the milestones that you've achieved. Sometimes people take a very casual approach to performance development, and for me, performance development is not so much, it's beyond these are the results you've delivered, but also it always provides the opportunity for a conversation around what are the main things that I need to focus on to grow and to be better. So it shouldn't be a tick box. And I think my leadership approach has always been, there's regular feedback with people and the teams that I lead, such that at any given time, they will know where we're at any given time, because I never wait for half of the year and things like that. It's on an ongoing basis. I give them feedback on things that they've done great. I applaud them, and the things that need to be improved, I also communicate that. So at any given time, there's no gray area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes the lines become blurred by over-familiarity between a subordinate and their superior. And you find even on the weekend you are drinking together, then next week is performance appraisal. And how do you think people can create healthier relationships? Not to say that it's just about the work, you are aloof, it's just work, yes, but like you say, there's a head and the heart.
Sure.
How do you create a balance so that it doesn't really begin to cloud judgment in the working space?
I think you've got to set boundaries. And sometimes it's the difficulty is always when you don't set boundaries. I've interestingly in my leadership journey, I have always found that I lead people, some of them who are my friends, and even at the moment. But when we're in the work environment, we focus on what is expected. We can be out there on a weekend and have a meal together, but I've always been very intentional around being objective and ensuring that there is a very clear boundary. Sometimes when you don't draw that boundary, it becomes very difficult for you to lead and exercise the appropriate, leadership and authority that you need, because you have seemingly maybe attracted unhealthy relationships that make you lose your objectivity. So it's how you are objective, you are open and honest, and at the same time make sure that all the time you set boundaries and be ethical as a leader is very important.
I like the ethical part that you've put in. A lot of people like to do deals in organizations. People in procurement, here, there. And sometimes you find even people who relatively get good pay. Where do you think that comes from? Because when I join an organization, I'm joining for work. And sometimes, yes, I know it's, like you said, I think it's relationships. The people you hang around with, to them, it's a normal thing. Yeah. It's like they say the first time you steal, you won't even sleep. But then steal 3-4 times, you sleep like a baby, because now it's becoming ingrained in your conscience. What makes people get engaged in those kinds of things? I know it's the greed and whatnot, but how do I then maintain a high moral standard in an environment where it's normal for someone to get a deal and get a cut and those kind of things?
I think one of the main reasons is people live unsustainable lives. People live beyond their means. So they want to, let's put it this way, people want to spend more than they have. And to finance the gap, they want to start creating or doing deals. Sometimes people want to get rich too quickly. There is a spirit of comparison because Sui is doing great, stays in this area, takes the kids to this school. So you want to be Sui, but you don't know the means.
And I'm told that's very common in banks.
Well, quite. Quite. And it's, in the banks and in different organizations. The need to be content is very important. And speaking from my personal experience, I think my wife and I, we just live, just be you, live a simple life. When you can manage, enjoy, but do everything within your means and be responsible. And how you keep, very high moral standards is to realize that you've got to earn, you don't have dishonest gains that are not sustainable. You're putting yourself at risk, your family at risk, and you tell yourself, after everything is said and done, what will it profit you? The ability to live a life of integrity as far outweighing benefits than doing quick deals that are not sustainable. You don't sleep peacefully at night because you haven't done the right thing. So just to earn your resources in the right way, you have more peace and it becomes more fulfilling.
Earlier, you talked about discipline, and the reason I brought in the issue of it being very common in banks is because bankers have got cheaper access to finances. You don't get a loan at a commercial rate. You get it at, obviously, a staff rate. And it's very attractive to people. And you find even those that have got no plans, just the idea that I can get, for example, at a very low, and most of them then find themselves in debt. I know you've touched a bit on how to avoid that, but given this new context I've brought in terms of cheap access to finances, I can get a car, I can do what.
Sure.
And then ultimately you realize you're just draining in debt.
That's right. It's quite a huge problem in our society in terms of indebtedness. And it be if you're working in the bank or anywhere else. It's, the debt in itself is not a bad thing, but it's what are you using the resources for? Is it for productive use, or is it for consumption, or is it to finance a lifestyle that only you know and you are not accountable to anyone? It's things like that create problems. And also, I always see that there's a lot of peer pressure at different times to, either be associating with people of a higher class and you want to fit in, and in the end, it starts creating pressure, on your resources. So just really live within your means and realize that to get rich is a process and doesn't happen overnight. So I tell a lot of young bankers to say your priorities are very important, and some of us, when we started working, we never had a car. We used to walk to work, and we had one pair of shoe, and we needed to embrace the process for the season and know that these things will come. So it's that balance that, people have to realize that just live a life that you'll be content with, and that contentment will not come by you being another person.
I've got two more questions. You say that you've had different roles in the bank. Was there ever a time where you vied for this position, you didn't qualify for it 100%, but you still went for it? And what made you go for it? And how did you make up for the difference in terms of where you lacked?
Yeah, so I remember when I was transitioning from Livingston, working in the branch, I applied for a role in credit. At the time, it was a corporate credit manager's assistant. So it was the first entry into seemingly a managerial role. And at that time, I had not yet completed my NATEC at the time. And because I had the aspiration to either work in credit or in corporate, I gave it a try. And I was called for interviews. So I came and did those interviews. And I did the interviews, I think, around 14 hours that day. And I got a call, I think it was 2 hours later, and said, are you still around? Because they knew that I was out of town. I came out of town. And they said, yes, we want you to meet our boss, who was a corporate credit director then. And I went to his office, and he said to me, we've interviewed almost 23. We had 23 people. A lot of people were more qualified than you. But the attitude that you've shown is what we are attracted to, and we will give you the opportunity. So that's how I got that role. So sometimes we rationalize a lot, but it's the ability to also not to be scared to attempt new ground. You may not be fully backed, but you can grow into these things. So long you're teachable, you have the humility to learn, and an open mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to young people? 5 things. As we come to, this is my last question, by the way. What 5 things would you give as advice to young professionals who are on a growth trajectory for their career?
Number 1, there's no substitute to hard work. You have to be disciplined. You need to be determined. You need to be focused, and you need to have a teachable spirit.
Mr. Kalero, thank you so much.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I learned a lot from you. Eh?
Thank
25
you.
years in one place is not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. It doesn't feel 25 though.
It doesn't feel 25.
No.
I think because you see, also some organizations give you the leverage to. It's like you've had different jobs in the same organization.
Correct.
But then again, and this is also a thing for others. You have one qualification, but you then begin to do different other things. How does that work? I know that a degree is just a way of showing that, look, you've got this competence.
That's right.
But how do you then apply yourself so that even for others, they can say, okay, you may not have, this kind of, but you have the right attitude, the right spirit, we can take you on.
Yeah. I think, there are many people that are very qualified, but they lack the ability to apply. And I think that really that's where a lot of cracks of things to do with attitude come in.
Yeah.
Because sometimes your seemingly overqualification can actually be a hindrance in you demonstrating a mindset that applies and creates value for the organization. So the practicality of your qualifications is what transmits value to the organization. And you have to integrate the two to be successful.
Yeah, I've seen others, you've done your first degree, before even do a master's, go and do another degree.
Correct,
you haven't,
correct.
Fully utilized what the other one can.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure.
No,
Thank you,
pleasure's
sir.
been ours. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hi guys, thank you so much for your support that you give to the podcast. We don't take it for granted. If you feel that the content on the podcast is worth it, it's valuable, that you learn something, we're asking you to support us even further with your financial contribution. That way, you help us to meet our costs and we keep the lights on and we make sure that the podcast is always available to you. You can do so by sending a contribution to any of the numbers that are showing right below. We thank you for supporting the Growth Podcast.